Okay, this is cramming for the final. Why Mars colonization is incompatible with adult-onset training. The preparation of astronauts currently takes many years. Mastery takes decades. And this is preparation for short duration trips to space or very simple sojourns in an ISS space station where everything's prepared for you. And in every case, every resource is brought along from Earth. The typical astronaut's a well-prepared passenger, co-worker, a versatile research scientist, potentially a pilot, and a serviceable repairman. They're able to get along with one or two compatriots under constant, real-time supervision and detailed direction of their activities from Earth. So as long as they're babysat constantly, and trained for 20 years, they can do what they do now. Inarguably, the training needed for an actual Mars colonist would dwarf current training. A viable Mars colony will inevitably fall prey to systemic failures. So in systems theory, there's the idea that you can make a system more complicated and you can build in backups, but you're just building in more ways for it to fail. You can build up backups for the backups, and then you have problems you never even thought about. Nuclear power plants melt down for that reason, submarines sink for that reason, not because they didn't try to make it safe or complicated, but because there is no solution. Simpler isn't better, more complicated isn't better. What you really need is that, currently, we're facing a situation where these colonists are going to face systemic failures if they have to ask Earth for expertise in the face of each crisis on a massive time delay of 20 or 40 minutes because light itself can't get messages back and forth faster. And these colonists must wait the better part of a year for materials that have gone low or absent to arrive from the sky. So imagine you have an aortic valve failure in one of your colleagues, and you've done a little surgery, but now you need to ask a surgeon on Earth to walk you through the surgery. That's physically impossible. Your patient will die on the table as you play chess by mail with the surgeon on Earth. Same if you need a valve. If you can't improvise that from local materials, your patient's going to die 9 months before the part arrives. And that part will cost the government $30 billion to send to you, with a 50% chance that it doesn't arrive. So think about this, all right? So a Mars colony will need to maximize, therefore, let's see, the expertise needs to be local, and its utilization of resources has to be local. It thus could require every third adult in a colony to be a doctor and a therapist and an electrician and a plumber and an HVAC repairman and a miner and a refiner, a machinist, a chemist, a farmer, and a microbiologist. For each colonist, multiple hats. You can't even just have one doctor in the team of 20. What if he dies? So that happens, So you go to Antarctica and the doctor gets sick and he has to do his own surgery. So instead, you have 4 doctors in a team of 20. You have 4 machinists. You have 4 plumbers. That means everybody's wearing 6 hats. Neil Armstrong trained 20 years to wear 3 special hats to do something no other human could pull off. That meant starting at 18, he was about mid-30s, late 30s, when he walked on the moon and pulled off a 4-day stunt. That was what it took to do that. So look at this dot. That's Earth from Mars. I think that's an average distance. It's not quite the farthest apart they get. It's not the closest. But that's 6 light minutes away. So if you need to cry for mommy to help you, she won't hear you for 6 minutes, and she won't get back to you for at least 12. And that's going to be 9 months before she sends anything to you that you need. So you can't be relying on mom and dad. That's it magnified. It's still a speck. So, chalk up an extra full decade of colonist training, at least, on top of what current astronautics requires. And that's before we consider the unique psychological prerequisites for a colonist. So, the ability to stay stable in a small, permanently isolated community with the same 20 jerks that you're now bored of and hate. And the most that humans can pull off now is 6 months after military training and threat of court-martial in a submarine, or 6 months in an Antarctic colony with the aid of lots of weed and downtime among a bunch of hippie scientists before they hate each other. That's it. That's as long as we've gone, right? So we're asking people to do this forever with no hope of an end to it and no chance of a different date on Tinder next week. All right? no chance for divorce court or an amicable settlement, in a murderous environment, unforgiving and devoid of even the comfort of bright sunlight or trees or breeze or shade or blue sky or the sound of rain, devoid of all the comforts to which we've evolved as a species for millions of years, and each of us as individuals from birth, from the womb. And we're basically saying, let's strip people of all of that and see how they do forever. The mental training implied here is profound, easily adding 5 years of total training time by itself. That's, anybody know? Who's that? It's Da Vinci. How many Da Vincis have we had in the last 2,000 years? One. He could maybe be a good Martian. How many Da Vincis do we need? Like, at least 18 out of every 20 people we put on the rocket. And he didn't even practice the core part of being able to leave Mother Earth and its comforts. I went to his tomb. He got all the comforts. He was like the Liberace of his time. You know, he was probably gay, and he was really into like antlers and art. He would not have done well on Mars. But he's the closest we've had. However, by adding 15 years total now, let's add it up, now 15 more years. So Neil Armstrong started at 18. Before that, he wasn't doing anything that really counted as prep. Starts flying planes. By 15, 20 years later, he's ready to walk on the moon. Now, on top of that kind of training, same with Chris Hadfield on the ISS. So we have 20 years baseline. Now we had 10 more for all these hats they got to wear, 5 more so that their head is in the right spot. How many years is that of training? It's like, yeah, 35 years. So here's the problem. We've effectively closed the opportunity for a colony to make its most essential local ingredient, babies. If we're trying to make something that will be able to sustain itself, that includes more replacement humans. Ideally, in the long run, we need to send fully prepared, fertile people to Mars. No offense to anyone older than that, they could be tremendously useful to the colony, but you just also have to have some of those that qualify as fertile. So let's think about this. Astronaut training is 18 or 20. Now you're adding 25 years to that, so by 45, they're ready. That's pretty late in the game for ovaries and for most testes to really play their part in this whole plan. All right, so our current approach means every Mars colonist arrives in their late 40s or early 50s, tremendously qualified to do everything except the most important central thing that life does, to keep itself autonomous and local. Yeah, see if I'm on the right slide here. Yeah. So, this also presumes that the first 20 years spent before we start training does not permanently embed psychological weaknesses and flaws that will prove to be common failure points in that closed, remote system of a colony. I read about the astronauts, right? The first men on Mars or on the moon, and almost to a man, they had extremely weird personalities. Neil Armstrong was super introverted and wouldn't even cooperate with people's curiosity after. Buzz, as we all know, is like, just a big old cad, and I love him. But each of these guys wouldn't do well permanently. Like Buzz would have slept with Ariel's wife, and Neil wouldn't talk when he got a psychological issue, and he wouldn't grieve well, and he would just stuff it. And you had guys that were blowhards and jerks because they had spent 20 years preparing wrongly in ways that cannot be undone at 20 and 30 years old. They have to be prevented. You have to let this plant grow while it's supple and young so that the tree points in the right direction. You can't bend the tree once it's tall. So, either we adopt a Soviet approach, hauling promising toddlers off to our version of Star City, or we start offering as an option in the free market of American education a form of K-12 schooling that serves as a legitimate, aggressive foundation for colonist training. And it has to be an appealing option because it's a free market. So it can appeal. Can it survive the scrutiny of its potential investors? Well, let's think about who those investors are. First and foremost, they are the students themselves. Can we find kids who want to go to a school that seriously proposes to conform every lesson to the goal of going to space? Of course, every other child at 4 wants to be an astronaut since we knew that was a thing. Like, I walked down the street the other day and a kid was wearing a Mars suit with a helmet. And I was like, you're going to be in my school. Yeah. All right. So a school that's sincerely preparing kids for Mars colonization from age 5 onward is a school that can plausibly deliver a rounded education that is light years more fun and literally fantastic than the standard packaging that schools have. Almost any other form of school is more boring to a 5-year-old. That's a 5-year-old in China, by the way. That's what they do to kids in China when they show promise as gymnasts. So that's the alternative to what we're talking about here. And the other alternative is we wait till they're 20 and they're useless on Mars. So what's the third option? Let's fix this. This is a terrible picture. As these kids grow up, though, think about what he's going to feel like about this Mars school when he's had 6 years of it, and now he's 11, and now he's 15, and now he's sick of this, and now he doesn't want to be a nerd, and he doesn't want to be off in space, and he wants to be on Earth where everything's fun, right? And now at 15, he's starting to say, why am I learning this? Why are we teaching this? That's the universal question in school. Why Hamlet? Why calculus? Normally the teacher in those schools, I've been one, just is like, because you have to, because people 6 generations ago saw use for it, or a weird fascist guy in 1880s Germany thought it was a good thing to teach kids, or there's a weird... What?
They built the pyramids with that.
Yes. Slavery gets things done, right? Right. So the issue is, as these kids grow up, as this becomes a school for 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds, as they become teens who question everything, they're going to say, why are we learning this? And for instructors at my academy, the answer will always be the same. This is going to be dogma. This is going to be like a Catholic Church phrase that they hear a million times. To ensure your survival, ensure the survival of your community, and vouchsafe the existence of life itself. Tell a 13-year-old that, and you'll see that that's the only answer that will get every one of them to shut up and think again about whether they're bored and about whether they're actually stupid to be learning this, because that actually speaks to the heart of what kids are starting to catch on to at that age. Life's short. I don't have much time. I want to have fun. I don't want to die. I don't want my friends to die. If it's not about that stuff, then why would I care? If it's not about life or death or fun, why am I learning this? So there's sincerity in that answer in a school built around Mars colonization. You can't get that answer to kids in a normal school. They're not learning calculus for those reasons. They're not learning Hamlet for those reasons. And that answer has an unrivaled power to silence skepticism. And it gives them the rarest of virtues in a teen, a sense of clear and profound purpose. And that answer could hold true whether the subject matter is parabolas. If you botch a trajectory, you're going to splatter. Or Hamlet. If you can't anticipate the breakdown of your community, whenever somebody gets jealous, sleeps with another man's wife, takes over his job, and kills him, and you don't understand how that's going to kill a third of the people in your little community, then your colony will also collapse overnight, like the last act of Hamlet. This answer will hold true for students with a compelling power magnitudes greater than any existing school's fight song or vision statement. But such a school has to win over other investors, namely parents. This isn't implausible once you realize that a curriculum that prepares their children for Mars survival also prepares them to excel on Earth in most versions of the 21st century that we can imagine. We don't know much about what our kids need to learn. It's a mantra among educators now. We don't know what they need to learn. We just know that they need to learn how to learn, right? And everybody knows that. But it doesn't really give you a sense of, okay, then what subject matter do we teach? We can't teach anything as a curriculum.
Thinking.
Yeah, I mean, thinking has to have content in some direction. You have to have an example or an activity, right? So a Mars survival mindset gives that. It also is preparing them for Earth in the mid-21st century, because the environment in the 21st century on Earth has only a few traits that we're reaching consensus about. Water's going to be running out, and everything's going to be getting hot and dry. Resources are going to be rare. Kind of like a baby, easy version of what we know Mars is like. Same with stresses and conflict, interpersonally and psychologically, as we strain the limits of what human life is like with our technologies. we're going to be messing with our own heads and pushing the limits of what drives us crazy and insane, like a Mars environment. What I'm saying is, if we teach our kids how to live on Mars, we can do so in good conscience, even if we think none of them will actually graduate and go to NASA or go to SpaceX and actually end up on Mars. If none of the graduates of these schools get their dream fulfilled and their prayers answered and get to Mars, they still will walk out of there prepared more than anyone else on Earth for Earth. And that's how you win over the parents. You tell them that. You tell them almost nobody knows what the future holds for your kids. And we just know they need to be adaptable and learn how to learn and how to get along. But we have a way to do that that's going to inspire them, and we actually have a specific fantasy involved that gives it shape until they're ready to give it their own shape. Finally, and that's what we know about the future. That's where your kids are going to be. Hopefully they're not planning on living in Florida. Inundation. Right, inundation, and also this is inaccurate. This is all brown. The desert line has moved from mid-Kansas, where I was born, to the Missouri border in my lifetime. The desert has been chasing me across the country until I decided to leapfrog it. Meanwhile, the Colorado River is dying, and all of us are going to run out of water to drink unless we convince these hippies to share. So, that's the future that we know for sure. And again, notice what I just said, convincing other people to share, and resources being precious. On Mars, everything is precious. Electricity, calories, time, attention, emotional energy, privacy, information, materials, food, water, air. A drop of it can be critical, and everything's expensive as hell, whether you import it or whether you make it yourself. And so, we have visions from Elon Musk about this. And today I got to talk to people that work at his school, where his kids go. Them and 40 other kids so far are going to a school much like what I want to build. And they're starting to piece together what this school should be like. So they've got one school in one location for 47 lucky kids, getting the rudiments of the start of what such a school needs to be like. And that's a really cool thing, because otherwise you don't have anything useful to put in the top of this rocket that makes it worth sending anywhere. You're going to be sending the equivalent of corpses, whether they know it or not. You might as well have it be an empty rocket. And so, synergy strikes here, because the final investor that needs to be invested in that idea of such a school is the people that are going to pay for it to get started before the money starts rolling in and the proof of concept works and the graduates are amazing, and before everybody buys into this being the next kind of high Ivy League school or brilliant idea. You need to have industrial, institutional, group, corporate-sized entities that are bought into this. And they invest at the outset, and they benefit from the output of the graduated workers. So is that true for this kind of school? Heck yeah. Synergy strikes again. Many future aerospace enterprises, especially SpaceX, require a new breed of human being with an interplanetary mind and skill set. And a Mars Preparatory Academy will be one of the only sources of this new breed for that corporation to draw from. Meanwhile, many earthbound industries and crises and organizations and opportunities of the 21st century will likewise require what? People with an interplanetary, resource-rare, self-reliant, adaptable mindset. The mid-21st century is right around the corner. Once we factor in those 35 years of preparation needed to load our Mars-bound craft with Mars-ready human beings, with Martians. If we want to have Martians, we need to start today. If we want to inhabit two worlds tomorrow, we have to break ground on these schools today. Yeah, so any questions? Yeah.
So the upshot is that either we go to Mars and make it like Earth, or we just let Mars come here and make it like Mars.
True. And I feel like that horse race is already settled. I feel like one of those two horses already broke their ankles on the way out of the gate. I mean, we might reverse course, and then we can't terraform Earth. Like, the only way we know how to live our comfortable 21st century lives with modern medicine and all the,
Earth was terraformed.
yeah, by our predecessors. And then,
We just gotta dig up how they did it.
right. But we also know that living the way they did, we don't have modern medicine, dentistry, homicide rate suppression, suppression of warfare.
They didn't need it back then because they
Yeah.
lived like Methuselah.
Well, maybe so.
I thoroughly believe it.
Well, and I think that, if we can pull that off, that makes this less necessary. But I do think that we have a long road to hoe before we do that. I think that the path there is still through the same mindset. You can't value your environment, be a good steward of the earth, and care about every last drop of water if you think that you're going to live in a land of milk and honey and plenty. And so I think this is going to be a very instructive time period for us.
100%.
Yeah, for sure. I've actually got a lot of curriculum designed, but I decided to focus the talk today more on just the case for actually doing this. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the school only exists right here right now, and in the sense that, we got Susan, who was talking an hour ago, who's doing this little mission-sized deep experiences for adults, and we've got Sims going for adults. But there's only 47 kids on the planet that are actually at a young age being taught in this paradigm right now. Yeah.
Well, don't give up on us oldsters
No, I think that,
because,
yeah.
Figuring out how to go to Mars is going to figure out how to keep us living and
Yes.
productive for a longer time.
I think that we won't survive on Mars if we don't send people over 50, over 60, over 70 years old, because they have unique perspectives. Only a 75-year-old can really say with any authority that you should calm down about the adultery you just suffered or the cancer diagnosis, because only they have lived through it and weathered it and see it from a God's eye view in the rearview mirror.
Don't you think we need to get rid of cancer first before we go to Mars?
Now, Mars is a really cancer-happy place. Yeah, it's got a lot of radiation. So
Doesn't mean anything.
then maybe we could use their radiation as therapy, right? Yeah, it doesn't have to be the cause of cancer. It could be the cure. Hey, so you're next, right?
I'm next, yeah.
All right, very cool. Just a moment. Let me eject this. Thank you, guys.